Oh, I am so honored, you guys, to interview my next guest. She's known as Radio Red. I love the title of her show, Read My Lips, Cool Conversations with Creatives. And we are going to have a cool conversation with Radio Red. She's going to share her story as a single mom. I think she's fine saying it was quite a long time ago, but living 3,000 miles from her family, going back to school after having degrees, raising her kids, and being, I love this part, you were a local disco dance star.
Yes.
Juggled being a full-time mom slash dad, right? Single parents are both, and
Yep.
balancing a social life. And thank you so much for agreeing to do this, Radio Red. Please share so single
Karen,
parents out there can have hope.
Karen Gibson, I'm so honored to meet you. You and I met on one of my radio shows. AK Radio Red is one of my stage names, we'll call it. I have another name I use for my business shows, and I have created 52 radio series since 2011. And you and I met on a show called Technology Revolution, the Future of Now. And we were talking about the old fashioned, new fashioned art of writing letters by hand, letters of encouragement, and sending them around the world. And you were introduced to me by our mutual friend, Alexi Katko.
Yes.
Very lovely and smart and passionate young man. So I was so excited when you asked me to come on your podcast. So thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. So
Thank you, because I know
what
you're
would you
really
like to
busy.
know? I am.
I would love advice from you for parents who, there's a lot of them who are recently divorced, separated. They're balancing the whole, you have dad Tuesday, Thursday, you have mom this time of day, but you had you didn't have like the joint custody thing.
No.
And a lot of women today are doing that. They might be giving birth, no dad around. They might have a 2-year-old, and then all of a sudden they're thinking, what do I do? So I know it was a long time ago for you, but the message and the advice is the same.
Yeah.
How does a single woman do it without filing for, I mean, I know some people, you do need state assistance, but sometimes how do you believe in your dreams again?
Well, let me give you a little bit of backstory here. I was a young married. I was in college in New York. He was at Yale University in Connecticut. We met in a mixer. We married. We had a son the next year. And then we moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts. We were both in school, continuing our schooling. I became pregnant with our second child. He decided to leave the East Coast and move back to the West Coast. So I spent a week with my parents in New York, and I got a phone call from my husband, and he said, guess what? We're moving to Eugene, Oregon. And we're going to live on a piece of land, and we're going to dig a well, and we're going to get up with the chickens in the morning, and we're going to farm our own food. This was back a long time ago. This was back in the previous, this was in the late 1970s, if you will. So I gathered my nerves around me and my two kids, and we flew out, and he packed a truck with our things, and I said goodbye to my family. I'm a New Yorker by birth, born and bred and raised, and we moved to Eugene. And after a year, I realized that it wasn't going to work out because he was just not capable of earning any income. $80 income in 1 year. Luckily, we had income from our parents. We were still very young. He had income from his college that he hadn't finished, and my parents were very supportive, an overused word, but they helped out. And I realized the you know what was on the wall. And this is when everything changed. Now, I will tell young mothers today, because of social media, which we didn't have cell phones. We had computers. I'll tell you in a minute, but we didn't have, we had email, but we didn't have the ease of communication back then that we had today. So the hardest part was realizing that at 27, I was raising two children. They were then 3 and 8. I was living 3,000 miles from my family. I needed to not be married because I could not see a future for us as a family, the basics, just living, just day to day. And I filed for divorce. Now I realized I had to make a living. I didn't want to be mommy and daddy's girl, grown up girl, divorced mom of two. I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. I had never been asked to do that in my entire life. So I said to my parents, what am I going to do? Now, this is a supportive family, Karen. They started sending me brochures on, shall we call, quick careers, things like x ray technician, a couple of years. There was a whole pile of stuff. They sent me a bunch of brochures. They mailed them from New York to Eugene. And I opened up the package, and here were all these brochures falling out. And one of them was computer programmer. I had no idea what that was, but it looked interesting. So I had a couple of girlfriends, women friends who were also divorced in Eugene. And I said to one of them, what do I do about this? She said, oh, there's a really, really great community college. It's 2 bus rides away. I didn't have a car. I had moved out of the house and into an apartment with my 2 kids. I was so scared in the beginning that I went to bed with a scissors under the pillow, 5 locks on the door, all the shades down. I had never lived alone and taken care of 2 kids, much less myself. I just hadn't. I wasn't wealthy. I wasn't super rich. I had just been appropriately taken care of as a middle class girl growing up in a good family. And that's the way it was. I didn't fear for anything. I didn't need anything. And here I was in Eugene. And the decision was, do I move back to New York and become their daughter again and ask for help? Or do I stand on my own 2 feet, which were very shaky at that point? So I called up the community college that my friends had recommended. It was Lane Community College. And I said, what do I do? And they said, come in and register for classes. Well, I found somebody to take care of the kids. My son was in school. My daughter was 3.5. I took a bus to the college and I said, I'm interested in the computer classes. And they said, well, here's the deal. They're full. You can't get into the computer classes. However, in 2 weeks, 80% of the people who signed up will drop out and there will be space for you. So would you please just be patient and come every day, twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever the class was, and stand in the back of the classroom and just be patient. Find a chair, just lean against a wall, whatever, and show up. By the 3rd week, there'll be a chair for you. I said, okay. So they enrolled me as a temporary student. And on the 3rd week, the class was 80% empty. And that's when the serious people stayed. Now, Karen, we were a group of eclectic people who were, I'm just going to use the term refugees from professions that they didn't want. So I had a degree in psychology, wasn't going to practice it. It took too long to get a graduate degree. Somebody who had been in architecture school didn't like it. Somebody had been in law school dropped out. Somebody was on the way to pre-med dropped out. So we were a collection of mid to late 20 somethings, even 30 somethings who banded together and took this damn computer class. And 2 years later, I emerged with a 4.0 GPA. I was
Wow.
They were really mad at me, the guys in the class. I took a business statistics and I did it with a pencil and paper, all the calculations. They were using slide rules. I didn't want to use one. So they really were pissed at me, if I can use that word. And I graduated with 2 degrees. So my graduate school was a community college. Okay. I already had a bachelor's degree and they accepted the credits from the bachelor's degree. So what I did was I found out there was a job opening and I applied and I went to New York for 2 weeks to visit my parents and I waited for the answer. And when I came back home, the answer was, you got the job. And before I knew it, 2 weeks later, I'm in a business suit. I sewed all my own clothes. I baked all my family's own bread in those days. And I went to the college and it was my first day of work. And this is going to sound crazy, but I looked around at the people in the office and I said, you mean I have to stay till 5 o'clock? I had never, I didn't know what it was to have a job. I was the programmer analyst for a statewide community college information system right out of school. I had done that well, and they felt I could handle this. I worked for a man who left 2 years later, went to get a new job in California, and it turns out that they made me the head of the system. So within 2 years, I was running a statewide community college information system. These were the key punch days. I was coding in PL1. I'm sorry, coding in, what was I coding in? COBOL on a Xerox Sigma 6 CP5, which is one of those huge mainframes in a great big computer room. And I had to, when I was in training, I had to stand on a step stool with 2 steps. I sewed my clothes. I had beautiful skirts and jackets, high heels to work, lipstick, hair done every day, very formal. That's who I was. Still am, you can see. And I had to stand up on a step stool in my heels to put the disk pack into the disk drive. If you look that up, Karen, you'll see that this really existed. We key punched. I was at a key punch machine, key punching the code. They hired me to do some contract programming for my day job. So on the weekends, I wrote thousands of lines of code. And on Monday morning, I came in and key punched it. And my programs are
Wow.
pretty good. I might have a 2,000 line code and I might have 2 syntax errors. I had it running by 1 o'clock on Monday, and they paid me separately out of another fund to be my own contractor. if
Oh
that
my
even
gosh.
if that even makes sense. In the meantime, I had the kids in swimming lessons at the Y, which I was able to find time in the afternoons to do. In the meantime, I was enthralled with disco dancing, and I met a young man through somebody wrote about me. I was dating somebody, and we were dancing at nightclubs, and somebody else's aunt read about me in the newspaper, and she said my what was it? Her nephew was a former Arthur Murray dance teacher, if anybody remembers that. And he was looking for a
Yes.
partner. So I met the guy and we became professional dance partners and we entertained all over Eugene. We were known as a he was a gay man. I was a young divorcee. And we would go to nightclubs and they would know exactly, oh, we have this table reserved for you. And they gave us drinks and they gave me flowers. And we entered Disco Hawaii contests. There you go.
Wow.
Made our own costumes, sewed anything, and I was taking care of the kids, and I had a decent babysitter for when I went out. And I was also wanted to try something interesting, so I started selling Mary Kay cosmetics at night. So I was doing the, and I was home. And here's the deal: I said to my kids, if you want a foreign language in school, which they were required to do, you better take French because I didn't study Spanish. If you want help with your homework, so they both took French. So we would sit together at night during the week. We would watch TV, Star Trek, MASH, reruns for me, first time for them, and I had never seen these shows. So we set up little tables in front of the TV. Yes, moms, I know you're not supposed to watch TV during dinner, but this was how we did it. We did our homework together. I did my coding. They did their math homework, the history homework. I helped them. They tolerated me. We were a little unit, and I like to tell people my children raised me, and that's the way it was. So we bonded together. We were a little unit in our little apartment, 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, and we just made a team effort at raising each other. I had no idea how to be a divorced mom. I had no idea how to have a job. I had no idea how to do any of this, Karen. I'm going on and on. Let me stop and take a breath here, and you can ask me some questions or just give me a breather here. So what do you think?
Well, I'm wondering what were the most challenging times because I'm sure it wasn't just all, oh, just effortless journey, right? Because when you have little ones, then you have your homework
Wow.
and then you have their homework and just the growing pains that children, even the best
Oh
of
yeah.
them have.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What were the challenges, especially a lot of the those wonderful teen years,
Yeah.
or actually any age. I'm learning when
Mhm.
my parent coach, no matter what age your child is, that's the challenging age. It could even
Yeah.
be 25, it could be
Yep.
5. So how did you handle, I mean, you didn't have any support at all, right? You're saying
I had
that.
a couple of women friends there, and I talked to my parents all the time, and they came out and saw me a couple of times. I went to New York for the summer for 2 weeks or so and stayed with them at their house on Long Island, and that was fine. But the challenges were figuring out who I was, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be. How do I conduct myself? How do I be a social person? I wanted to date again, and I
Hmm.
did. How do I provide for the safety of my children, which I did take care of?
Yes.
How do I keep in touch with them, in touch with their dad, who was back in Seattle at the time? How do we maintain communications with him? How do we arrange vacations? He was in Seattle, I was in Eugene. I would drive halfway up to Portland, Oregon, and we would swap kids, and I'd give the kids to him and he'd take them back to Seattle, and then we do the same thing a week or two later so that they could have some vacation time with their dad. It wasn't an easy divorce, and we basically had no money. He hadn't worked and I was in school, but we figured it out. But the biggest challenge, I think, Karen, was who did I want to be? Did I want to sell Mary Kay cosmetics for my life? Did I want to run a computer system? Did I want to work in that kind of a very busy office environment, basically a production environment? We were all programmers. I
Hmm.
took another job a few years later it was a service bureau for the secondary schools of the state of Oregon, and I was running the student services division of the secondary schools, doing programming on an IBM 4341. We had terminals to enter our code. We didn't have to key punch, and I was coding in PL1, a language I had never heard of until I got there. So I was doing that. And then after that, I came back to New York. But you asked about teenagers. It,
Yes.
it wasn't easy. By the time I got back to New York, my son was in high school. My daughter was in what we called it junior high school, was middle school. It's changed names since I
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
there. And I let my son stay an extra couple of months to finish the school year. And he was so trustworthy and so mature at 16 that I left him the keys to the house and friends helped him out with driving around, and there were buses. And he finished about 2 months, I think, of school. While he was there, we kept in touch by phone every day. I left him money for groceries. People gathered to help him be his independent but safe self. And then he came and joined me and his sister in New York. She was an interesting teenager, and there were times when I said to her, "Can you divorce your kid?" So I can't do with this. She was a challenge. My children are wonderful. They're brilliant. My daughter is a very accomplished pediatric MD, pediatrician, and my son is a very accomplished corporate attorney now. So they turned out fine. But I like to tell people I didn't marry a lawyer or a doctor. I raised my own, and so it's been an interesting journey, and it's just been, who do I want to be? What are my responsibilities? What are my priorities? Am I a mom first? Am I a divorcee first or second? Am I a social being? Am I a homeowner? Am I a job holder? Am I allowed to go out and have entertainment? Do I have any business becoming an entertainer, a disco dance instructor? I had hundreds of students. And it was just a question of, how much time am I allowed for me? How
Hmm.
do I make sure my children are safe?
Hmm.
How do I make sure that I'm staying healthy and able to take care of them? How do I be a responsible adult and have my job? And what's interesting is that I do things backwards and out of order. And now I'm a full, yes, I do. I scratch my nose here. I know I'm not mad at anybody. Say when your nose is itchy, you want to hurt, you want to hit somebody. No, I like you very much. You can cut that out of the edit. The deal is, I believe, and I'll give this advice to moms, don't be afraid if you need to go back to school. I had a degree. I could have gone on and done something in psychology, social work. I felt that there was something else I needed to challenge my brain in a different way. And I had the nerve to say, I'm going to go to graduate school, but it's going to be a community college. And I'm going to take 2 years of classes, and I'm going to get 2 degrees, dual degrees, and then I'm going to be hireable in something that I really want to do. And I sense that that was going to keep me happy. I need to have my brain, you know that, Karen, occupied and
Yes.
busy and challenged all the time. I'm not a just fill in the boxes and sit there and do
Hmm.
the same thing.
Hmm.
It's not me at all. I've learned over the years that opportunity knocks in the strangest ways, in the strangest places. I grew up kind of afraid of everything. I didn't cross the street on my own till I was 8 years old, even though I lived in a very good, safe neighborhood. I was just afraid. I was scared, in some ways. But by high school, I was playing the piano for the girls' chorus at a large high school in Queens, New York. I was on stage
Wow.
introducing. Yeah, I had piano lessons since I was 7 in classical piano, and I was always out there somewhere doing something. I was the secretary of the honor society in high school. But my point is that I still felt uncomfortable being in front of people more than I needed to be. Yes, I put myself out there, but it was in a guarded way, I believe, looking back. And now I broadcast. I have a couple of million listeners around the world. I'm full time. I have business radio shows. I talk to
How did
smart
that
people.
even happen? Radio
Well,
Red, how do you get from I don't want to
I'll
cross
tell
the
you.
street to, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this global show.
Okay, I'll tell you. It's an interesting part of the journey. I hope I'm not taking up too much of your
No,
time, but
no.
I was in Long Island in Great Neck. Some people may know where that is. It's an upscale neighborhood. I moved there with my daughter. My son was already in college, and I needed a safe place. I moved into a fancy schmancy building that had a doorman, and I felt, as long as I'm going to have to be commuting to Manhattan at that point when I came back, I needed a building where there was support and safety for her. So I overspent and went above my head, but I was the working girl in the building. Everybody was, most of them were retired or industrialists, and it was fine. So one day, I decided I wanted to do stand-up comedy. And I looked in the newspaper and I saw a couple of ads in the New York Times. They call them little reader ads. They're about an inch tall, and
Hmm.
it
I
said,
remember those.
do you ever want to be on stage doing stand-up?" And I said, that sounds kind of interesting. I was in a relationship with a man. I was going to get engaged to him, and it just wasn't really working out. And I was crying a lot. And I thought, well, what's the antidote to crying is laughing. So I found a place in New York called the American Comedy Institute, and they had a little tiny ad, and I put the ad in my wallet, and I left it there for about 2 months. And one day it fell out of my wallet. It's a little piece of paper from the New York Times, and I called. I said to the woman, "You going to write jokes for me?" She said, "Hell no, we're going to teach you to write your own. I'm writing my jokes. You're going to." So I signed up, and before I knew it, I was in a 3 week class. Excuse me, a 3 week class in Manhattan at night. And on the fourth week, I was performing in front of 250 people at Caroline's Comedy Club with I think there were 10 newbies and they had two experienced comedians opening and closing the show, the bookends for us. It was the scariest unbelievable time in my life, and I talked about being divorced. That was part of my it was a 3 minute, you learn to put together a 3 minute set with setup and punch, and it was scary. Your guests had to pay to be in the audience. My mom and dad came in with a carload of people, neighbors and friends, and they took a table. And it was amazing. I was scared out of my mind. I could hear my knees knocking. I got on stage in Caroline, the famous comedy club. And it was and then I started getting invitations to perform around New York. So, long story short, I wrote a little article to the local newspaper. This is a crazy ride. And I started doing stand up and I live here. And somebody saw it and I got a phone call from a woman who said, I have a local TV show at a public access station about 8 blocks from where you live. Would you like to be on my show? And I said, what? She said, yeah, I'm interviewing a woman who's a mystery writer. And I think that stand-up comedy is another form of communication, a mystery in a way. Would you like to be a guest on a panel? Sure. So I went to this little dinky place above a store and it's a TV studio. I said, what? My neighborhood? We have a TV studio here? And then somebody else asked me to be on another TV show. And I said, what? What's going on here? So I learned that public access was in a house across the street from where the studio was. So I walked in one day and I said, what does it take to start your own TV show? I'm not kidding you, Carol. I just walked in and they said,
Wow.
oh, give us $100 and we give you training for a month and we'll help you build your show out and help you teach how to get volunteers. So I created a TV show and that was 1995, I think. And then
That
I
is
created a
crazy.
second show and a third show and a fourth show. And people started hearing about me and inviting me to be on their shows around Long Island. Well, one day I'm on a show with my friend Larry Davidson, and a woman is behind the camera at a studio in Lynbrook, New York. Turns out she's the general manager of WGBB AM radio, the oldest station on Long Island. And she said, hey, you've got an interesting voice and you're an interesting person. They were doing political shows and I was a comic relief. I was telling some jokes and anecdotes and lightening it up a little, not funny, but intellectually funny. So she took my phone number. The next thing I had a phone call, a Friday afternoon in the middle of a snowstorm. I drive a sports car. Sports cars don't like to be on the road in the middle of a snowstorm. She called me up and she said, hey, my engineer, my host for Friday night, 6 p.m. isn't coming in today. I don't know. He's got a cold or he's faking it or something. Would you like to come in and host a show? I said, excuse me? She said, yeah, why don't you? I said, wait a minute. I'd love to, but I'm about, on a good weather, I'm about 45 minutes away. In bad weather, I'm about a 2.5 hour drive in snow and my car won't go. I'm sorry, but thank you for thinking of me. The next week on Friday, she calls me again. My host isn't showing up. You want to come? I said, listen, we need to make an appointment and settle this out. I can't just pick up and drive whatever. So she said, come on in and bring your calendar. So I came in. She said, I'm offering you a regular Monday and Thursday night radio show on WGBB. I said, what? She said, yeah, you and your friend Larry will co-host on Thursdays and you can have your own show on Mondays. I said, what? So it was vanity radio, meaning people paid to have airtime, but I didn't have to. I was the bridge host. The Chinese radio network owned the station during the day, and at night they had a 1 hour bridge show before the paid shows came on. She said, you're
Wow.
going to be the host of WGBB tonight on Mondays and Thursdays. So I started trekking out to Babylon, Long Island. It was about a 45-minute drive, an hour and a half in traffic on Fridays and Mondays. And I'm sorry, they moved to Merrick, New York and Merrick, Long Island. And it was 45 minutes down to the South Shore. And I started hosting on Mondays on my own. And I had no idea what I was doing. So I brought a whole briefcase full of horoscopes, news articles.
Yeah.
I was in joke groups on the internet. People were sending me jokes. I was printing them out. I had loose leaf binders full of printed jokes, Karen, and I was bringing them to read on the air. And I started interviewing people and talking to people. And people said, "We love your voice. You're very good. Keep doing it." And this went on for a couple of years. And then people started saying to me, hey, you're a celebrity now. Would you like to be a host at our bachelor auction for cancer care and for Children of Hope Foundation? So I started getting invitations to do stage work in front of 1,000 people, to be
Wow.
on stage as a volunteer. And so I do my radio show it was Friday nights at that point. By the way, I had a show called Ooh Ooh Baby. Nobody Get Upset. Friday nights at 10 o'clock. I co-hosted with a doctor who was a friend of mine who had been on my radio show. And the Chippendales became one of my sponsors.
No.
Yes, the Chippendale dancers were my sponsors, and the guys, the stars of the show. I went to the show in Manhattan. It was crazy. It was a riot. The stars of the show used to call my radio show live at around 10:30 on Friday nights, and I'd say, "How is the show?" And we would talk about the Chippendale show. They paid to be on my show. We did about a 12-week gig with them. And then when I did my 101st radio TV show, two of the Chippendales, the one who looks like Fabio with the long blonde hair,
Yes, yes.
he and a guy who was a brunette and their manager drove to Great Neck, and they were on my 101st TV show in the studio with me for something to talk about the 101st show.
That is quite a
And I have no
journey.
idea what I'm doing. How did I get to broadcast? I was hired as I did marketing for big banks and marketing for real estate companies on Long Island. I moved from Manhattan to Long Island back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day I got a call from a headhunter, and I thought, oh, this must be a scam. They're calling me. Well, it turns out it was from one of the world's biggest business software companies in the world. And they found me on one of the career builder or one of those, the ladders online. They found my resume. They said, we'd like you to apply for a job. I said, I don't even know what you do. They said, don't worry, you'll figure it out. It's okay. They set me up with an interview in Germany with a woman over the phone in Germany. And I said to her, am I what you're looking for? She said, yeah, I think so. And then they had me meet with her manager over the phone in Denver. And I said, they said, yeah. So they hired me on a 6-month contract to be a marketing manager for a huge company, one of hundreds, by the way. And I went to New York. I went to Manhattan to their office. And about 3 months later, I said to the manager, I love it here. How long is my contract? She said, we love you too. We're offering you a full-time inside job. That was the start of a 9-year career. A year in, this is very strange, my manager got a letter, an email from somebody who was a business broadcaster on a great big radio station where my shows are, And this person said, we would like this company to become a sponsor of our business show. And here's what it's going to cost you. We'll give you a couple of banner ads, 30-second on-air ads. Well, my manager didn't know anything about internet radio, and she knew that I did. So she tossed it over to me and she said, would you please evaluate this? I took a look. I gasped. I said to her, give me a week. I cold called the CEO of the biggest internet radio station in the country. And I said, you don't know me and I don't know you, but this is who I work for. Would you help me come up with a radio show for my company? He said, keep talking. I went back to my manager 3 days later when I said, don't pay this person the money to sponsor his show. Let me create a show for us. She thought about it. A month or two later, she gave me funded 13-week trial radio show for me to do a global internet show. My format, 3-person panel discussion, roundtable, sound bites, no interviews, just thought leadership, no selling, no hard sells. And after the 3rd week, she said, I love it, go big. And she funded me for a year.
Wow.
That's how I got started in business radio. But by the end of the first year, I had 3 series. By the end of the second year, I'd created 10 series. By the end of the 3rd year, I'd created 15 series. And I now have 52 radio series. I have never missed a day, except the day my mom passed away and I was at the hospital with her. I don't think I missed a day in 10 years of hosting radio. This year, I have currently 10 shows. And I think I'm up to a total of 52. And I'm known around the world for being a very congenial and well-prepared host. And I treat my guests very well, like my family. So I hope I didn't bore you, Karen. But
no, that was an amazing story. You know what I got from it? I mean, you didn't know what you were doing, but I think when you have some kind of it's just really hope, and then you trust that these opportunities, when the doors are knocking, you open them.
Yes, I kicked them open.
And they might just be a little opening, and you're just like, you know what, I am doing this. And they might not even know, right? But then don't you think it just sets up a course of events that you could not even have planned?
Yes.
So I believe in the universe, I mean, really guiding you to, I mean, I would never have imagined being on your show. I did another Voice America with Gene Farish, and it's just as a, the new normal in education and all that. But when Alexi asked me and Deslin, hockeyist, to do this, we're like, what? And this was fun. I mean, your
Yes,
show is pure fun. We didn't really
yes,
have
it
to
is.
plan like and do research. It was
No,
truly like our opinions, our
be who you
predictions,
are.
and
Predictions. Yep.
it was just such a fun opportunity that I
I'm
would
glad.
never, ever have. I couldn't even predict it, with it. And then with Alexi, I just happened to be on his Clubhouse and I didn't even really know what Clubhouse was. And then when
Hmm.
we started connecting, and then he just put it out there and said, "Hey, would you guys want to do Voice America with Radio Red?" And I said, "Oh, what is that?" And because
Yeah.
I didn't know there's so many different Voice Americas.
Well, they have right now 5 different channels. So there's the empowerment channel, the variety channel, the business channel, I think the health channel, and they might still have a sports channel. So it's one company. It's Voice America. It
Okay.
goes under World Talk Radio LLC, and they do business as Voice America Radio. So they
Okay, that's
all
what it
of the
was. It was
yes. So
empowerment. I think it was Gene Farish Love Light. So it's
this
like under
show
the
is on
empowerment.
Read My Lips is on Empowerment, and all my other shows are on the Business Channel. So yes, so it's one Voice America, one corporation, and they have multiple channels and lots of hosts who do very interesting work. But most of my shows are business, and that's what I do. Shows about supply chain, digitalization, shows about conversations in a digital world, shows about businesses and technology. That's my beat basically, is business strategy and technology, financial excellence, digital engagement, the future of mobility, the future of utilities, the future of manufacturing. These are the topics I cover. And Karen, you wouldn't believe how much I learn from preparing for my shows and preparing with my panelists, prepping them, getting them used to the format. Because most people think, oh, I'm going on the radio, it's a webinar, I'm going to read a couple slides and I'll have 5 minutes and I'll do this. And it's like, no, you're talking 3 minute sound bites. You're going to be a real person. You're going to have a conversation with me, and you're even going to smile and enjoy yourself. And there's going to be 3 other people on the panel with you or two. Yeah. And we'll be on live, and it's cool. And I've had to train people very comfortably. It's like training children, teaching
Mhm.
them you don't have to have your notes in front of you. You don't have to be reading. You can just be who you are. Tell us who you are and what's your passion for what you do in life. What is your passion? And for this show, Read My Lips, I'm a regular guest at the Steve Harrison's National Publicity Summit, which I attended virtually about 3 weeks ago, and I just booked another 40 guests for this show.
Wow.
So I have 3 people, and they're creatives, they're artists, and they're designers, and they're musicians, and they're writers, and they're educators who use creativity somehow in their life. They could be software designers. They could be. I met a man who designs custom retreats for people, trips all over the world
Oh my
for small groups,
gosh.
and he'll take you to places. And we're dreaming about going to see the volcano on Machu Picchu, and he'll design trips. This is after COVID and before COVID, of course. But I met a woman who is married to a very famous, I won't give the last name, but a very famous man in the poultry field, shall we say. She wrote his biography, and she was the former president of a 40,000 member women's agricultural organization in the United
Oh
States.
my
She owns
gosh.
2 wineries, and guess what she does now? She takes goose eggs and laminates them and makes them hard and makes them into purses and picture frames. She puts jewelry and gold chains on them and sells them for $2,500. She was on at the summit. I booked her and she was on one of my shows. I meet fascinating people. So I booked 3 guests per week, and I'm now booked full through the first week of November, and I'm going to another summit in October. So I booked I'm in 13 breakout rooms during a 5-hour Zoom session, and
Oh my gosh.
I get to meet 80 people, and they get exactly 2 minutes on the clock to pitch me. And in that time, I give them a date if I like them. I write it down in a Word document. I write down their email, their phone number, and I write down their website and a little bit about them. And then they're shushed off by the monitor in that room. And then I meet 4 other people, and then they send me to another breakout room. So I've turned it into it's like speed dating for
I was gonna
radio
say it
bookings.
does sound
Yeah.
like speed dating. Well, where can people find you? Can you give them all your handles,
Just,
social media,
just
Twitter?
look up read. I don't really use Twitter much anymore. I was live tweeting 20 times during my live business shows, and talk about multitasking. Crazy. They can basically just find Read My Lips Radio on Voice America,
Voice America.
Yeah, go find it, and they can figure out what my other name is if they want to. But this is a lot of fun. This show, and this show I live stream on Facebook on Monday nights under Read My Lips Radio, so you can find it there too. And this is the fun one. The other, if anybody has any ideas about business topics, they're welcome to pitch me through you. Actually, it's AKA Radio Red at Gmail. I would welcome. And Karen, I hope I've given you some interesting information, but
this was quite an interview. Thank you so much. I know you're really busy, but that sounded like a story for like a movie. Literally, like someone could do your biography and people would be like, no, this has got to be a fiction story. No, this is actually Radio Red's
well, you talked
story.
about the universe, and I know you got my email the day after I spoke to you, Alexi, and Deslin. Yes, I was visiting my daughter, and I said, I need some chocolate for the ride home. She's only a half hour away. It was 100 degrees in my car. She gave me 2 little Dove chocolates. Inside they have little sayings, little printed messages. I put them in the car and they started to melt. So I stuck a tissue under them. I said, well, I can't eat them in the car. It's going to get all over everything. I have a new car. So I got home and I carefully brought them in the house and I opened one and I sucked the chocolate out of I drank the chocolate and chocolate. That was delicious. And then I looked at the message and the message said, I get goosebumps when I think of this. It said, send a letter to a friend and include chocolate. Now that was Thursday afternoon, Wednesday morning, we had just talked about the art and science and passion for writing letters to show somebody you care. And Alexi said to me he wanted to send me a gift of chocolate and coffee.
Because that's where he works on a chocolate farm and they do coffee.
The next day,
that's crazy.
I open up and it says, send a letter to a friend and include chocolate. And I thought, I took a picture of the wrapper. I sent it to you and Des and Alexi and Lady G. Lady G. And I said, this is just crazy that a Dove chocolate wrapper would land in my daughter gave me 2. That's the one I opened for. She had a whole bowl of them. And this is the one she gave to me. And it was like,
well, you could have thrown it away. You could have said, oh, it's melting, I'm gonna throw it away. But no,
not me. It's chocolate.
It's chocolate. And you actually read it. And when I saw that message, I was like, oh my gosh, you could not even have imagined that.
No, never.
I think our paths crossed for a reason. And I just enjoy this time. This was like a really fun. We just call it talking, talk story in Hawaii. And this is what we do is it didn't feel like ask you a question. And then, it wasn't like one of those formal interviews. Is truly just talking story. And I love that. Read My Lips. I think you are definitely a cool conversation, creative person. And I look forward to watching more of your shows. Thank you. Enjoy your day. And thank you so much for your time.
And bye. I hope I added value to your listeners and viewers.
Definitely. You have. Thanks.
Bye from Red. Bye.